All right, guys, welcome back to the Fontana podcast. I told you all we'd have a special guest on live this evening. And tonight we've got lifestyle coach, mindset mentor, helping us look at things from a different perspective, helping us have that growth mindset, Mr. Luke Allen. How you doing, mate? Great to have you on the podcast.
Good, yeah, I'm good. I'm great, thank you. It's good to be here. I was buzzing when you suggested catching up on the podcast last week. I thought that'd be nice to get a good conversation going towards the end of the week. So
yeah, and how's your week been? How's things through COVID? How are you doing with that sort of thing?
yeah, good. It's been an interesting. I think it's been an interesting year for everybody, hasn't it? But for me, it's a bit of a blur, to be honest. The last 7 or 8 months is just all merged into one. And there's been periods of time where weeks have seemed to disappear, but then other weeks have gone quite slowly. But lots of stuff has happened, lots good and bad, I guess. But yeah, we're here now, and it's good to be able to kind of reflect back on it. I think at the end of the year, there's something I talked to a lot of people about the importance of reflection, and that's something that I'm trying to do myself at the moment. So
yeah, and in terms of yourself as a business, yourself as an athlete, has 2020 during COVID become busier to help athletes gain better perspective? People that you work with. I saw that you also work with the army as well.
yeah.
Like during this time, mindset and mental health has been a massive topic and a massive issue in terms of, trying to help people cope during this tough time. So as business became a little bit more intense and on your side, or, how has business been?
Yeah, so predominantly my work is with the Talented Athlete Scholarship Scheme. So I work with, like you mentioned, the Army Elite Athlete Performance Centre, and it's across essentially all athletes are dual career athletes. So obviously within the Army, they're soldiers and also athletes in their own respective sports. So I mean, it's been busy as a team. We work in kind of a multidisciplinary team with 4 other practitioners. So I work as the lifestyle coach and kind of coordinate the program to some extent. And then we have an S&C coach, a sports psychologist, a physio, and a nutritionist or dietitian as well. So very fortunate in that sense to have a good team of people to work around the athletes with, and kind of meet their needs. And yeah, throughout the last 8 months, it's been busy, I'd say. Naturally people need that extra bit of support. Everyone's going through this circumstance or these circumstances in an individual way. But there's also been some fits and starts with things as well. And I think as a team, it's probably more from certainly the athlete support perspective is there, but as a team being able to work out where we can have the best impact, I guess, and how we can support athletes as a team collectively, and also work with coaches is really key. So we've kind of used the time really well, I think. Like when I said some of it's been a bit of a blur, it all sort of merges into one, but we've used the time super well, and it's been nice to now look back, and we've had some reflection over the last couple of weeks, or I have anyway, and you can look back and you can start to see some of the hard work that went in that first lockdown period sort of coming through now into this middle part of the year, or the academic year, which is sort of how we tend to frame the year. So
yeah, and so when you talk about that TASS scheme, is that where Dame Kelly Holmes came from? That sort of army, but that being an athlete as well as working in the army, is that the sort of how Dame Kelly Holmes came about with athletics as well?
Yeah. So the army program with TASS has only been running from about 2015, 2016. But yeah, Dame Kelly Holmes, she was a soldier and an athlete. And I just think when I was younger, when I was 17 or 18 years old, I kind of didn't really know much about the sporting opportunities within the army. Mm-hmm. And having worked within it on the other side now, supporting the athletes or the soldier athletes, I look at it and I think what an incredible opportunity. Like these athletes they're the best in their sports within the army. You know, and some of them are, if you step outside the army, they're competing to a really high level as well, and they're essentially able to get paid to like they would essentially in a normal job, progress non-sporting career and promote through the ranks, but also they're able to compete in their sport, some full-time, depends on kind of the stage of their career. But yeah, you know, the support they have from their units is great. And it's just, I mean, it's just a privilege to be able to work within that kind of environment, really.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool, actually. Like,
It is, yeah.
You know, because you're thinking, I mean, does every army officer at the start doing their training? I was always under the impression that, you know, you done your 6 weeks mandatory army training before then you could go out and specialise in terms of, I remember I done the army as work experience, so I went away for 7 days.
Yeah.
And the reason actually I went to the army for work experience was because during high school, you had to either go to a paper company, or you had to go to a mechanic company, or you had to go to like a library or, you know, retail. And I was just going, and this leaflet came through and it literally said like, army work experience, 7 days, stay overnight. And I just was like, I get to run and shoot paintball guns and abseil and do all these and stay away from home, and I don't need to, and that counts towards my work experience. And I think the student advisor or something was like, yeah, you get, and I went, I'm in. And my mum's like, right, just calm down, all these. And I went there, all guns blazing. You know, you do the 1.5 mile time trial. Because I'm a runner, get a fast time. They're saying you should be in the infantry and all that sort of stuff. But they actually they glammed up really well being a PTI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
that would fit perfectly for you with what you're doing now.
yeah, and I was going, I'm gonna be a PTI. Like that's what my mindset was. But I think if you don't really know a lot about what the army has to offer and different avenues you can go down, your parents just think the worst, that people are going to put, you know, a weapon in your hands and you're going to need to, you know, go over to war. Whereas you've just stated there that if you're a talented athlete in your chosen profession, whatever it may be, you don't necessarily have to do those things. And if you understood the army a little bit more, then maybe it wouldn't be as so, you know, everybody thinking that you don't get to do, you know, your sport and specialise in your sport if you're talented at it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think there perhaps there is a misconception around it. From my experience, we've got a huge array of talent, non-sport talent on the program, and I mean, some of the greatest minds in the country and in the world, you know, work within the army. Like that's a fact, and it's not just about having a weapon in your hands. There's anything to some extent, I guess, anything you can do in the civilian world, you can pretty much do within the army. And you know, like I said, there's people that work in technical trades. Certainly, there are like those that work within the infantry. There's people that you're able to do degrees in the army. There are a lot of different opportunities from a career perspective that you can really kind of move forward and excel in. So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. I didn't know enough about it when I was younger. Sounds like you perhaps didn't as well. I think that's the same for a lot of people. If you're a young athlete kind of stepping in or deciding where you want to go in your career and what you want to do next, I think that's definitely something to look at and explore and connect with somebody that can give you a really good open perspective of what the opportunities and pathways might look like as well, and how you could perhaps merge the sport with whatever your career aspirations are.
Yeah, no, sweet. So this podcast is all about, you know, the current topic of discussion just now is like mental health, and you know that's just one word to describe a whole avenue of, you know, different factors that contribute towards mental health. You know, the same way we would say, you know, healthy eating and fitness. Like, it's just like a big term that we use, but there's all these wee branches that actually come together to make that word. And you know, these lockdowns all over the world, especially in the UK, have been really, really tough, especially gyms getting locked down, especially competitions for athletes, whether that be, you know, athletics and track and field, whether that be football, whether that be, you know, over in America, you've got NFL, you've got basketball, everything's getting, you know, it's very, very closed in terms of either no fans can come along to watch, or things are getting cancelled because there may be another outbreak in that city or in that country. And people are finding it really, really hard to cope and manage in this current situation, the current climate. And this is where I feel we had a discussion back at a track meet where, you know, I feel that genuinely your advice, your expertise, your knowledge is there to, I feel you genuinely will be able to provide value in this podcast to help our listeners maybe shift their perspective, maybe think a bit more positively, use a negative in a positive way. Just, you know, having a different outlook, because I think that when we're so caught up in our own head and our own thoughts, and I mean, it's easier. I'm saying all these things as if, you know, it's just the listeners that have, you know, their demons and things like that. But me and you also know that we've both got our demons inside as well. And day by day, you know, 24/7, 365, they're always popping up. It's kind of like that little game that you get in the arcade where the little mole pops up and you need to slam it with a hammer and pop it back down and stuff. And I think the better the coping mechanisms, the quicker you can slam it down, and it won't sort of like laugh at you and go, ha ha, you're not going to get me, sort of thing. And hopefully that gives people a visualization now as well, that like whenever a demon comes in, pop it down. But it's how do we pop it down? And, you know, we've got a few, I obviously want to ask you loads of questions in the time that we've got. And, you know, what got you into studying the mind and studying the psychology of, you know, mindset? What got you into that to start with?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess so I study positive psychology and coaching psychology. It was a part-time master's, or is a part-time master's that is due to finish next year. I started it back in 2018, and I mean it's almost been the same as like a degree, to be honest, like in terms of my undergrad. But what really interested me about it is, I think just from kind of looking into the work that I did and understanding perhaps what some athletes, how they perceived like psychology and sports psychology. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a sports psychologist, but it's in like, I guess lifestyle is informed by positive psychology, or an element of psychology is kind of grounded within it to some extent. But it's more holistic than that. It's about like supporting people with their non-sporting commitments and to essentially maximize themselves as people, as well as performers. So it's kind of more like a psychosocial perspective. But so my master's looked into positive psychology, and it just really intrigued me because I've always been quite a positive person. I've always tried to look for opportunities in challenge and you know, and positive, like positivity, or promote positivity to other people. So I saw this opportunity to study positive psychology and just jumped at it really. And essentially positive psychology is kind of trying to support people to optimal functioning, whether that's in life or sport or any area of their life. So so what drew me to that was that you can focus on what's right, what's good, what strengthens you to get the best out of yourself. And I think in sport in particular, just from conversations I've had over the last few years, there perhaps is a misconception around like what psychology is. People think if I'm seeing a sports psychologist, then it's because I've got something wrong with me. But it's not about that at all. It's, in terms of sport, it's about supporting you to perform to the very best of your ability, or get the best out of yourself as a person. So so there is a misconception around that. But yeah, like I said, don't get me wrong, I'm certainly not a sports psychologist, but it's certainly something that just intrigues me. Like how people think, what supports people to be the best version of themselves and get the best out of themselves is really key. And I think you referred back to that conversation that we had a couple of years ago at Highgate. And I remember us talking about a lot of different things in a short space of time. It was a really good conversation. But we talked a lot about kind of process, and we talked a lot about like how people put how they value like external achievement, like outcome goals essentially. And for me, like any athletes that I work with or any athletes that I coach, I think there's a balance to be struck. But certainly one way I like to talk to athletes or talk with athletes about what they're focused on. It's the only measure is the measure that against themselves essentially. Like that's what they should be focusing on, in my opinion, to get the best out of themselves. Because if they can do that, if you can fill yourself up and get the best out of yourselves, then essentially you're going to hopefully deliver your best self in a performance setting anyway. So, and you manage your own expectations in that sense. So you talked about the arcade game. When you said that, I think there's an element to like perhaps not knocking them down, but for me, it's like recognizing that these things will pop up and managing them. And actually, the first thing is acceptance, isn't it? Like accepting that these things will pop up and they will become present, their deemings or whatever they are. Then it's about how do you manage them? How do you work with them and give yourself the time and the space to be able to then move forward in whatever challenge it might be that you're kind of going through at that time.
Yeah. So like, there's that famous quote we talk about, do you lack motivation or do you lack knowledge? And, you know, I think when we get the acceptance, so, you know, say if we could use me as an example, being an injured athlete at this moment in time and going through many injuries, and the acceptance you're injured, then you maybe see, you know, a British athlete, or you see these Kenyans and Ethiopians now running world records and running them with ease, and you're in an injured position, and you're looking out onto these athletes, or the GB athletes or the Scottish athletes that are your competitors, and you see them training well or running well in a race, and it quickly pulls you out of being logical and rational about your injury and where you are at in terms of in relation to your athletic, you know, injury and your development. And I feel that when we accept it, but there's a hard part between accepting and then doing the right steps and not being sucked into, you know, what everybody else is doing to make you feel worse about yourself during an injury, than feeling, when you were saying at the start, trying to look at this injury in maybe a positive light, understanding that maybe this injury, this small injury, stopped you from, you know, so I get posterior tibialis tendonitis. Maybe that stopped me from getting a stress fracture down my shin because it was a small one before a big one was happening. If I didn't, you know, make sure I strengthened the soleus, strengthened the post tib, and strengthened the calves, to then when I get back to running, taking the load towards a marathon. And it's easy, you know, to sit back when, you know, you're not scrolling through Facebook, you're not scrolling through Instagram, and you're not seeing who's doing what and who's up to whatever training session or posting times in Strava and Garmin and all that. It's easier to chat right now. And this is where, again, where you said, just because you don't go to a sports psychologist because you think you're broken, like a break it, fix it model. It's like, you take your body to the gym, you take your body to the track, and you take your body to the roads. Take your mind to the gym, take your mind to the track, take your mind to the roads by going and seeing, you know, a professional and helping your general mental well-being. And if I don't speak to, say it's a physio or another athlete who I'm friends with, if I get in my own head, that injury can send me on a vicious downward spiral, to the point where, I'm not going to lie, this year, not because of COVID, I think a lot of people, when I was chatting to them, weren't listening to what I was saying. They thought I was upset because I couldn't race or show certain form during COVID. It was actually that I couldn't race at all because I didn't even get into good shape, and then I get injured again. If you know what I mean? You weren't even to a point where you could race, and then all of a sudden you still get injured, and you go. And I'm actually thinking, like, for a little while I was in a really bad place, thinking I want to quit the sport. Like, this is getting too hard, you know, being, you know, 30 years old. And
You're not 30 years old.
I just turned 30 in December the 16th. I know this moisturiser
Yeah.
I use, it's Clinique for Men, this moisturiser. I've had a good life through this personal training, I tell you. But just turned 30 years old, you know, thinking about, you know, previous success in 2015. I'm not the athlete that I used to be. You know, there's a lot of athletes out there just now that are injured, or they're not performing well, or they're not achieving the expectations that they once had. How do they, and how do I get myself out of that sort of dark hole? Where do you start when you're starting to sort of think about those external things?
Yeah, it's a great question, mate. I think I've had a couple of conversations with athletes over the last couple of weeks about this kind of thing, and I actually spoke with the sports psychologist who works at the Army Elite Athlete Performance Center as well, and we talked about this concept of like dials. And I think certainly, like, you know, an athlete who's competed at your level, I've not competed quite to that level, but I've competed and been almost like, well, at university, you kind of feel like a full-time athlete to some extent, and you kind of put all your eggs in that one basket. And I think we talked about these dials and the importance of having an awareness of what the different things that you have in your life. And if you dial up, say you've got, you know, like 10 on the dial, 1 to 10 on the dial, if your sport is dialed up to 10, and everything else in terms of your relationship, what you're doing socially, just other interests that you might have, if they're on 0, then there's almost a lot of, well, there's a lot of emphasis and expectation that is on your sport. So in terms of being able to be well and support yourself and look after yourself, it's about ensuring, or for me, it's an awareness about, and you talked about knowledge, a knowledge of what are these other dials? Who am I as a person? I'm not just a runner. I'm a husband. I'm a son. You know, I'm a father, perhaps. It might be something well, but there's a lot of different things that make people up, I think, and there's a tendency, and we see it with athletes a lot. Like they just like you ask anyone what they do if you walked into a sporting environment, and the first thing they would probably say would be, I'm a rower, or my name's John and I'm a tennis player. And that's just ingrained within us. But there's so much more to us. It's like, who is the person? Great, I can see you're a tennis player because you're holding a tennis racket and your kit. But who is the person? Talk to me about the person. And that's, for me, like, as a lifestyle coach, I want to know more about the person. Like, we talk about sport, and we talk, because when we're working with athletes, we talk to them about their sports. And obviously that's prevalent at times, but I want to know more about the person. Like, what do they do on a weekend? What do they do in their spare time? What really like fills them up as an individual? Like that's the kind of stuff that I really want to kind of engage with and build those relationships based on those things. Because I think they're our cores. Like they're the anchors, so to speak, that ground you. Like when athletics doesn't go well, then obviously it's going to hurt. And obviously it's going to be, you know, I guess psychologically painful in a way if you get injured, or if you have to transition out of the sport for whatever reason that might be. But it's what else makes you up as an individual. Like, what is that broad identity, and what is it and what does it look like? So in terms of those dials, like, what are the other dials? And if you find yourself in a situation where you've got to step back from your sport, like yourself, Sean, who's having to step back a little bit, injury, you know, what do the other dials look like? And what else can you dial? Can you spend a bit more time with your wife? Like, can you spend a bit more time with your cat? Like, whatever it might be, or watching TV, or like these other things that make us up as individuals, I think are really important to be aware of, because it's natural. Like, life gets busy. It's been incredibly busy for everyone this year. And I think it feels like that it gets very busy for a lot of people. And there's a tendency to just get stuck into work. Like, I know over the last 8 months, I have started work at, you know, sometimes 7:30, 8 o'clock, and it's got to 7:30, 8 o'clock, and I'm like, what has happened to me today? And I've not even left the desk, and I've not, and perhaps that day's just disappeared, and I've not spoken to Mel a huge amount. And then, you know, she's tired, she goes to bed, we have dinner, I go to bed, she goes to bed, and then before you know it, a whole day, or perhaps a day and a half, has gone by, because the next day is a work day as well, and it might be busy, and you feel your relationship dial is really low. So, and that's something that fills me up. Like, being able to spend time and engage in good conversations is super, super important for me. But it requires like an awareness or first an acceptance that it's not there, and then an awareness to go, actually, do you know what? I need to take 25 minutes out here over lunch, or 30 minutes, or whatever it might be, go for a walk, grab a coffee, like engage with someone. Like, and do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's really important. I don't know if that makes sense, but for me, it's about how can we support people to become aware and knowledgeable, to your point, about what are these dials that they can kind of dial up and dial down at various different times. The whole person in a good place. Because if the whole person's in a good place, in my opinion, then you'll get the best out of the performance that you're trying to, whether that's in sport, business, work, whatever. But if you can, you've got to look after the whole person. None of this comes in isolation.
Yeah, and I totally get what you're saying with the self-awareness, and then also gaining a little bit of perspective on the sport itself, like understanding that it's a part of many cogs that turn round, and just because that one it might be just sticking and glitching a little bit, it doesn't mean to say those other cogs can't be moving nice and freely until this one maybe starts clicking back into your life. So, that's, again, so you're looking at like self-awareness is a massive one.
Mm-hmm.
Gaining perspective on life as a whole, like, so I'm saying, there could be people talking about they might have plantar fasciitis, they might have a stress fracture, they might have a posterior tibia, they might have a, Achilles tendonitis or a calf strain. And we could go a wee bit deep here and go, well, at least we have a calf or a soleus or an Achilles 2 strain. Mm-hmm. We have 2 feet that can hit the ground, where if we, gain perspective and be grateful for, having the things that you have, instead of, again, like that whole perspective of, I think I saw a picture the other day of a mother lioness, holding the cub in its mouth, and there's a footage of both angles. In the first angle, it looks as if the lioness is like literally got the cub in its mouth and eating it, but then around the other side, it's just got it by its neck to get it out of danger, and you just see the wee cub like this, like walking with its mum, and it's kind of shifting that perspective and understanding that be grateful for the actual things that you do have at this moment in time. And this might lead on to the next one, is like social media marketing and all these sort of, consumer, whether it's time or financial consumer devices, where I think in society nowadays, it is programming human beings. I don't know if it's been since the start of time or whatever, but as an athlete or in life or in business, we're never quite fully happy in the present. Like, it's always, oh, when we get the back garden done, or when I paint the house, or when we get that couch, or that TV, when we get that TV, or that new phone, that car, it just, you're always looking to the future and never being grateful for the present. So when you're injured, you're thinking about how bad you're going to be or how unfit you're going to get. You're thinking of it, and thinking into the future creates anxiety, and thinking into the past creates depression and sadness. And I feel like society and the way marketing and the way social media and all these platforms are making us shift towards always reaching, always wanting, and never being okay with just what we have when we have it. And it's shifting, it's becoming more and more aggressive to the fact where it's now super hard, and we call it meditation now, but to sit down and do nothing and be still. It's and I know I went off on a little tangent there with the injury, but I feel like the wheels are always spinning, and the stress dial and the anxiety dial is all amplified because of society around about us and comparing ourselves to other people and what they're not going through that we're going through. And we think that they've maybe got a better life than we have at this moment in time. And all these things are going through. And if your identity is only attached to athletics and sport, and not on that you have a great relationship, that you have a roof over your head, that if people are listening and watching this podcast right now, you're probably doing it on a good couple of hundred, if not £1,000 or dollar device. You have Wi-Fi and you have mobile data. Like, you're doing pretty bloody well, but except we love to just go, if you're injured and that one of those important things in your life aren't going that well, or business, I want to earn more money, or I want to, you know, build a gym, like, but I'm not there yet, and you're beating yourself up about not being where you want to be instead of being happy of where you are as a person. Yeah. Do you see that a lot in people that you work with, always thinking about but what about, and you're going, mate, like, here, like, be here right now.
For sure, yeah. It's really interesting that you kind of, the way you're talking about it. It's even something over the last couple of weeks that I've recognised in myself as really important, to just engage with the presence, I think, or the present, and become present. Like, because over the last 8 months, but probably over the last couple of years, I've noticed like how much I've moved away, and at times I've gone into that way of thinking. And I think in sport, you're naturally going to get that with athletes, because they're striving for the next race or the next PB or whatever it might be, or the goal that they've been working towards for a long time. So that's why there's a balance to strike in terms of those outcome and process kind of focuses and goals, I guess. But yeah, just think, like, you talk about gratitude there, like being grateful for what you've got. And I think sometimes people see like things like being grateful or expressing gratitude or writing gratitude journals and those kind of things as quite fluffy concepts that it's just like, well, that's not for me. But I think if you really engaged in it and those sorts of acts, then, and exercises, you would really get the benefit of them. Like, even just getting out, like this week, for example, I've been out in the mornings and I just go out and I do like a short kind of, like, I wouldn't say it's meditation, but it's like mindfulness exercise, just like the 5 senses. Like, what are 5 things I can see? What are 4 things I can feel? You know, and what are 3 things I can hear? And just go through the 5 senses, and just engaging and allowing whatever comes into my mind, or whatever I'm smelling or seeing and hearing, or even like what's one thing I can taste at the end, like whatever comes into kind of those senses, I just let it happen. And I find that after that 2-3 minutes of kind of going through that mindfulness exercise, then I'm present, and actually I feel a lot better about myself, and feel that I've grounded myself before I crack on with what might be quite a busy day. So yeah, I think it is about trying to be present, not just in the actual moment, but like in the time of your life that you're in, because it's incredible. Like, when you think about all the opportunities that are afforded to us, like, naturally we've got to put ourselves out there to kind of create them. But yeah, being grateful for what's come. Like, I'm grateful for just being able to have this conversation. I love these kind of conversations. And like I said, I've had some good conversations in the last couple of weeks with athletes about that dial kind of concept. And I come out of that and I feel filled up from it. I feel filled up because I feel I've supported somebody, I've helped someone gain a bit of perspective, develop some self-awareness, have some reflection time. But one thing that is really key for me, and this kind of was born out of an experience I had this time last year, it's about providing space. I think we can provide ourselves space to do, to become present in certain things. And that might be exercise as well, providing space to exercise, providing space just to engage in conversation, develop those relationships that we know are part of those dials, but also like providing space for other people. Like, what can we give to other people? And we can all go into a coffee shop and say to, ask someone behind the counter, like, a bit about their day. Like, we can help someone else lift someone else's day, literally by saying, how are you today? How's your day been? Like, and it's such a simple act. And it brings me into kind of some of the work that I'm fortunate enough to do with the UMATTER project, looking into like mattering to others and how we feel we matter to others, and what are those acts of mattering that we can kind of put out into the day and make other people feel that they matter. And that's just one thing, like picking the phone up to, it might be a parent who you haven't spoke to for a few weeks. I know I'm guilty of that sometimes. And ensuring that people in our lives feel they matter. I'm not saying like push everything out and all of your time goes on everybody else. But we can do that, and it has a positive impact on us as well. I've gone off on a tangent now, but I've mixed with a few things there. But do you know what I mean? I think it is about certainly providing space for us to become present in what we're doing and getting the best out of us. But actually, then we can provide space for other people. There's two ways to it, and if we can provide that for other people, then you're putting something positive into the world, aren't you?
Yeah, well, they do say that you smile at somebody, it'll go around the world and come back again.
Yeah.
And on that note, I need to tell my mum. All right, darling, I love you. Okay, tell my mum I love her. Honestly, I'm one of the worst. I am one of the worst. Like my mum has to speak to Caroline to get to me, because she'll text me, or she'll, like, oh, happy birthday, how's the new coffee machine? But then she'll text me knowing, oh, she'll need to text Caroline, how's Sean enjoying his new coffee machine that he got for his birthday? And then it's to get to me, Caroline has to ask me the question and then to text my mum back and stuff. So you're absolutely right, mate. Like we all think we're all caught up in our own wee self, our own wee world, where we I don't know if I want to call it selfishness, because sometimes we don't mean it. It's only if you mean it. But we are all caught up in our own wee world. Something as little as Caroline was saying, there's been lockdown just now in Scotland, and it just lifted today. But midweek there's people trying to get into the Nike shop to return items and things like that, and they're like, we're in lock, like, and they're throwing hissy fits at the front door, and you're going like there's more to, like, just chill. Like, the world doesn't just revolve around you and the pair of trainers or the £10 hoodie that you've got in your bag that you must get a refund for right now. We're all quite emotional creatures, from time to time. And again, that's probably us, like, getting back into our own head and thinking me mentality. But no, I think that you do have to. I think it's amazing, like you said, letting somebody know that you care about them. I think that actually makes you feel. I think you actually walk away. You go, oh, I just done something good. That was brilliant. That felt amazing. What you're talking about with somebody behind the coffee counter. The other day, the Tesco delivery guy came to the door. Wee Simba, my cat, darted, because he's a house cat. So he just when he sees a different person, he's like, oh, and darts around the house and goes mad. And the guy saw him. He's like, oh, I've got 2 cats in the house as well, blah, blah, blah. So I pick him up and I'm like, here you go, mate. Like, have a wee, and I've had him there, and I'm like, there you go. Somebody has a new pal. I was like, and just because that guy's probably just, all he does is sit the crates down. Guy picks it up. Cheers, mate. Bye. Whereas I've, 11 o'clock in the morning went, yeah, here's this guy's called Simba. We got him from America. I was in America for a scholar, and he's just like, oh my God, all that sort of stuff. And the guy walks away and he's like, I can't wait to deliver to you again, mate. 118, like, that's what that's weird. I'm a runner and my house number is 118. Can you? I just thought that right there. And to do that, you walk away and you go, because I think as well, like we've got a weird thing where we do want communication with people, but the sign of, say we are, we're doing something and somebody phones you, or somebody does want to stop and ask you what the time is, or ask for directions, they pull down the car and you're thinking, what do you want? Instead of just being like, all right, how you doing? Yeah, you're open to help. I think a lot of people kind of, what are you up to? You're weirdo. Why are you asking? Why are you talking to me? Like, we don't know each other, but we're communicational creatures. Like, we need that communication. And to do that to somebody, like, so if you, again, I've asked people, I go, if you're running as well, you go by somebody, and if they make eye contact, you go, all right, how you doing? But they're just like, oh, who's that? And but it's because we're so connected to this now, that I think that sort of, that nice interaction with a human being is one, it's become more meaningful now because it's less frequent. So that it takes them back. You ask the coffee lady or the coffee guy behind the counter, oh, how you doing? And, sorry, what? And you're like, how you doing? How's your day? Oh, great, thanks, yeah. Oh, amazing. And you've just, you've lifted them as well as you've lifted yourself, because that interaction meant something to them.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned it, like letting people know that you care for them, that you appreciate them, they're valued.
yeah.
That can just, it can go such a long way, and it's, you know, it can have a really positive impact on someone else's day. But we don't know what's going on behind every set of eyes. Someone said this to me before, Guyton, and every set of eyes has a story. Behind every set of eyes has a story, and we don't know what's going on. But that one little act can have a huge impact on somebody. And it may be the first real conversation they've had that day, or perhaps they're going home and it's a really challenging time at home, or perhaps, you know, they're in isolation a lot of the time. That was the one day they're at work in the week, or a couple of days they're at work in the week, and they spend a lot of time on their own. So that engagement can be really, really important and have a really big impact.
The next thing is, you touched on this earlier, was you spoke about the dial and one being exercise, and how important that is to having a sort of greater, more positive mental well-being than maybe somebody who is sitting down watching TV, watching Netflix, watching Amazon Prime. You know, I don't know if it's just British culture, but from the time training people and coaching people in the gym, you know, online, all these sort of things, is usually when people get super stressed, or something bad happens, they may, you know, they may break up with a partner, they may lose their job, COVID happens, so lockdown, you know, they'll go into furlough maybe, or any of these sort of things where there's these stresses that come on. And the first thing to go is the thing that's been madly researched just
Yeah,
now.
you've mentioned that before. I've seen a couple of videos that you've done and you've talked about that.
What, that's the first thing that goes that actually helps you. And actually the things that make us go into that downward spiral, i.e., you know, sitting down, doing nothing, eating rubbish, watching TV, alcohol, and maybe drugs. You know, why is us as human, this might be a massively deep question, but why is us as human beings are not really realizing the importance that exercise has on our mental well-being?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I've been there myself. I think, like, at times I've gone through a lot of injuries. I ruptured my Achilles in 2018, and that was after. So that was a third operation on my Achilles. Two previous operations in 2013 and 14, and I guess probably, you know, what, we're 2020 now, going into 2021. So for a good probably 8 to 10 years, I've had those kind of Achilles issues, and there's definitely been times over that you know, that stretch where I've gone through some really difficult and dark times, because, like, you know, I've put a lot of emphasis into my sport and put a lot of emphasis into my running. So, and when I'm not able to do it, as you know, it has a big impact. So I think, yeah, but you go through those dark times, and then the last thing you want to do is get up in the morning and go for a walk, because you don't get the same feeling that you do from running, or you don't get the same feeling that you do from lifting weights. If you've hurt your shoulder and you can't do it, then, you know, you don't just want to go for a walk around the block or do something different, because you don't get that same vibe. And I think it can definitely have it can certainly have a big impact if we are doing it on, in terms of being able to get people, when you get people moving, you change your state and you're able to feel more positive and hopefully have a more productive day. It's interesting, you know, it is one of the first things that goes, like you've mentioned before. I guess, you know, I think one of the reasons that it does go is because it's a bit more effort to do it, isn't it? It's easy to let it go. It's easy just to get up and crack on with your day. Certainly when we're in isolation, we have been at different periods of this year. You can get up and you can walk straight to your desk, you know, and you can open the laptop, and before you know it, 2 or 3 hours have gone, literally disappeared. And then you roll into something else in the afternoon, and then it's 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, and you don't want to get out. And then perhaps you have, and I've done this through lockdown, because Mel, my wife, is incredible. Like, she kept me fueled through some really big challenging periods when things were busy in that first lockdown, and was really good at being able to recognize when I just needed to stop. So she'd pull me away, or she'd bring me some snacks or lunch or whatever up in the office space that we've got, which was very, very supportive and helpful of her to do that. But it can have a massive impact when you do that once, you miss one day, you miss two. Before you know it, your consistency's gone. Then these demons start to come in that you try and, you're trying to knock down. So it's trying to, again, it just, for me, the big thing is about recognizing whether something is an emotional response or a logical response. And if I'm feeling emotional, then can I just try and stop and just recognize that? And then think, what's the best next thing for me to do? What's the right thing for me to do right now? If my goal is if I'm saying to myself, I just want to feel better, or I need to get a better routine, then stop and try and pause for 5 minutes, give yourself the time and space to actually make some logical kind of decisions on stuff. Because I think people know the answers. Like, from a coaching perspective, I love being able to support people. But the biggest thing is it's supporting them to support themselves. And I think people know what they need to do, but sometimes they either need to provide the space for themselves to do it, to make those decisions, or they need someone just to support them to say, right, we're catching up for half an hour. And it's the kind of the social sensitivity in our friendship groups that we might have. We go, do you know what, that person probably needs a bit of a conversation right now, or a bit of a time to even just have a vent. And out of it, they'll probably be able to make some positive actions and positive steps just by the act of listening. And again, that's something like supporting someone or listening to someone is an act of mattering as well, isn't it? Like it's saying, I'm going to listen to you. You matter to me. I'm going to give you this time, and I'm going to make sure that you're able to have the time that you need right now to keep you moving forward, because I recognize it's a busy time for you at work, or sport's not going great and you're injured, or whatever this stuff might be, or there's been a relationship breakdown, or one of the kids isn't well, like whatever it might be. We can all do that.
And you touched on this. We know the right thing to do, and that exercise takes effort. So then that's why ultimately we, in a way, we as human beings, the last thing we want to do is, we're programmed to, survive and to, conserve energy, because, we might get eaten, back in the day, sort of thing. And what is always sort of plagued my mind is how easy it is to form bad habits, and how hard it is to form good habits. And I don't know if you've read this book, but it's Atomic Habits by James Clear.
I haven't, no.
And the effort that it takes to exercise because it's friction. If we take out effort and we just call it friction, and we call the ease of picking up your phone and scrolling through Instagram as frictionless. So the more frictionless something is, the easier it will be to do it. And more often than not, it's always the bad habits that are frictionless, and the good habits are always got more friction, i.e. effort. And we're trying to compete with these devices. Like you're trying to tell people, if you want like sort of a good mental health and good general, well-being, maybe go for a walk, pull yourself out, go and get some fresh air. There's studies showing that, back in the day, there was research where the hospital took patients from inside the hospital to being outside the hospital in a big gazebo. They were on the same equipment and everything, the same medicine. And it was like the chances of survival outside in the vented sort of gazebo tent, the safe space, the fresh air, actually promoted a better survival rate than it did being in an enclosed space back in the day, where windows were closed and there was no air getting in, and the importance of going out there and getting some fresh air instead of being stuck in the house all the time. And the only thing that I've ever known that caused people to exercise when they didn't know they were exercising, that made it frictionless, was the Pokemon app.
Yeah, when you could, I'm not a fan of Pokemon, but I know people were running around. I coached an athlete who would go on his runs and look for the different Pokemon. What are they called? Like games or tasks or something like that.
Like avatar, like wee avatars. We went and caught wee avatars or something like that. And I don't know if this is a way we need to go down, because just the day-to-day sort of putting your trainers on and going outside and going from point A to point B is, I don't know, just old school back in the day, so mundane and monotonous that people might not want to do that. People, and I don't know if I've gave anybody app developers or any fitness, like an idea that call it like a trap door, where you make them do something when they're like kids play tag, they're running, they're burning calories, they're getting fit, they're getting healthy, they're building their anaerobic system, they're building their aerobic system, but they're playing tag. They think they're playing. But if you told me to go and do cross country, the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah. It's like gamification, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's interesting, Sean. I think one thing that jumps out to me is like naturally life gets very busy for people, and something that jumps out for me is that we can manage the support network around us. So if you know that it's good for you or it's going to have a positive impact, just to be able to shut the laptop down and get out for a run, walk, go to the gym, and time permits that, then it's about making sure that the people that are in your lifestyle actually are aware that you're going to be doing that. And I had a conversation the other day actually with somebody about something similar. Like they made this plan, which was great, but then the question is, well, what if it doesn't go to plan? What if the plan doesn't actually happen? So what do you need to do to ensure it does? And some of the actions, or one of the actions that came out of it was, I need to communicate this to my friends. I need to communicate this to my partner, because if I don't, then they're going to be expecting me at 5 o'clock to do whatever. Like, actually, in my plan, I've got this to do. You know, I've got to get an extra session, or that has to be there from a sporting perspective. So it's communicating and engaging with the people around us, so they're aware of what we're doing. Yeah. And that, I think that's just it's a simple thing. It's challenging to do sometimes, don't get me wrong, but it's a simple thing to say, right, this is like, for me to be in the best place possible to spend time with you, these are some of the things that are really important to me this week. So this is when it's going to be in my schedule, in my routine. And yeah, there'll be some, back and forth that is needed with that at various different times. And you have to cooperate on certain things. I know people's lives like might have 2 or 3 kids at times, or they're looking after Simba, like whoever it is, whatever these things might be. But yeah, if you're planning to do something like that, and then in terms of those habits and the behaviors or the things that you feel is really important for you to have in your day that fills you up, then communicate it with somebody. Manage your support network. I think that's a key thing.
I really like that, because I think there's going to be a lot of listeners, especially clients of mine, who, but if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. And they get themselves, they're yes men or yes women, and they take on a lot. And then when you ask them, when are you training? When are you getting out to exercise between our training sessions? When you're going to, and they'll just, time, get away from. And I said, look, you need to make sure you say, like, I need to block this, because for me to be able to take care of everybody else, I need to take care of myself. And this is what helps me take care of myself. And what you said there, like writing it down and then verbally letting people know who are maybe putting that pressure on you to go, whether it's the husband or the wife, like, to clean the dishes, or, do the dinner, or, I've got some people who maybe help. And this is like, and it's hard to tell people this when they're doing some selfless work, like they are maybe, helping people at Christmas, like they're delivering presents to like less fortunate and, disadvantaged kids. And you're trying to tell, and they're coming in and they're stressed out. They're stressed that they're helping people so much that they're not helping themselves. And I'm like, if you have a mental breakdown, then you're then not going to be there for those kids as well. So it's a selfish thing that you're doing it too much, where you can maybe just step back a wee bit, give yourself half an hour to 45 minutes, so it can top yourself back up, so then you can give yourself back to others. And it's really hard at that point for me as a coach to be like, when you're helping fulfill, kids and families who are less fortunate's dreams at Christmas, or giving them food to have on the table. You're just going, but when they're coming in and saying that they're stressed out of their mind because they're so busy with it, I'm going, right, well, how do we make that happen? And I think you've just gave them the right answer. The key to making that happen is to write it down, maybe even the time in the day, write it all down, then say it to the people that are maybe asked, like at 5 o'clock to 5:45 p.m. after my, after my work, before I go and do my extracurricular activities for the kids. I'm going to the gym, or I'm going to walk, or I'm going to cycle, or I'm going to swim, whatever it may be. I'm doing this physical activity that helps me de-stress, decompress, fill me back up, and I'll catch you at 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And that is, I've never actually gave that advice to them, but I think I'm going to do that. If they don't listen to that, I'm definitely going to do that.
It feeds into what you said about devices as well, Sean, because if you think if someone's blocked that in at 5 o'clock, if they haven't communicated it, I'm not saying like send a massive message out to everybody in your contact list to say, look, don't contact me at 5 to 5 to ask me to do something that's going to take me time. I'm not saying do that, but certainly the people that you feel need to know, that perhaps those that if they ask, then you probably would do something. I think you can just manage that, because it might be work, like even communicating to work that I'm doing this straight after work. I'm out the door. I'm going for a run. I think that can have a positive impact as well, because it's also your example to other people in your team, perhaps at work, who perhaps don't do that enough. But that can have a little bit of an impact in terms of inspiring them to be like, do you know what, actually, yeah, I need to do that. I've had a busy day as well, and they're creating space for themselves after to lock out from the day. So I'm going to do that myself. And the fact that they're communicating it, it's like accountability in a way, isn't it? Like, I'm going to communicate it back. So I know that crosses over from what I was just saying, but yeah, I think managing your support network, manage the things that potentially could distract you. Like what pops in, what WhatsApps pop in, or what pops up on Instagram, you know, whatever these things might be, but manage what pops up on your device, or even switch it off at 4:45, knowing that if something comes in, it will distract you. So manage that, like control what's in your wingspan. I think what's in your wingspan to control. And there's a lot of things if people really engage with that.
Yeah, I like that. One of the things I do is switch my phone to, I do not own an Apple Watch, so I've got an iPhone and I've got a MacBook, but Caroline asked what I want for Christmas, and she's like, oh, and because I get so much, like I got the coffee machine that I wanted for my 30th birthday, I got it, and I'm just like, that's it, I'm good.
It's probably a pair of Vapor Flies, right?
Something like that, Hashtag, Nike, sponsor this podcast. But I've got a Garmin, and I just want to make sure that I never connect the two things, because I know if I take that phone out with me with clients and work, it's going to distract you, and you're going to not do what you set out to do. And it's easy to, once you get that one notification, to just allow it to, then scroll through Facebook or scroll. It's a process.
You lose an hour or 2 hours, and then it's like, well, now it's 8:30 and I want to be in bed, or I want to settle down or there's a program on TV and it's too late, and we make excuses for ourselves, don't we? And, if you miss one day, you miss 2 days. A good friend of mine said that to me, and then if you miss 2 days, then before you know it, a week's passed, then you just feel pretty bad about yourself, don't you? Yeah. So I guess going back to that example about kind of blocking your time out, but managing your support network, it's almost like your own do not disturb kind of process in place that you're fully controlling, or managing is probably a better word, to ensure that you fill yourself up to be able to deliver your best self when it comes to the other things you have to do in your life. Love it.
And you, since we met down in Terrington, you have always been a very positive, uplifting, looking at things half full instead of half empty approach. You've always had that, whether you've been injured with your Achilles, because I know the problems you were going through back when we were running together, Sunday long runs around Bushy Park and Richmond Park and things like that. But you'd always be positive in your approach and your outlook and managing and controlling the controllables. This might be a big one, but who has been your role model to emulate and be that person that you be to others like myself and people who come and ask for help and guidance, and that positive approach that you have, those eyes that you have, like seeing the world through those eyes? Is it a role model that you have that helps you be that person that you admire?
Yeah, it's not anyone kind of famous. For me, I'm sure a lot of people kind of perhaps say this, but for me, it's my mum and dad, because they've always been able to come. They've had a lot of challenging experiences in their lives, and I guess as the older I've got, the more I've started to understand what was going on for them at those moments when I was slightly younger. But they've always been able to kind of look, I guess, on that bright side and that positive side. And I wouldn't say they were using phrases that we hear now, like opportunity and challenge and, you know, find the positive, but they were doing that. They were looking towards, like, how do they move forward? It was almost like a given. And they're kind of, they're for me, they're not just role models, they're heroes in that sense, because they've been able to really, like, get the best out of themselves and support me and my brother and our family, and all of that whilst going through what had been for them some really tough and challenging times. So yeah, my parents they're just legends. They're for me, like, I look at them and I think all of these external things that we all want, like you talked about it, the new car, the new house, like these things that can be so easy to kind of draw our attention in, or we put our attention on them. But then I look at my mum and dad and I think they just live a good life. They just are happy, they're content, like, and they just enjoy life. So when I go home, and I'm looking forward to being able to go home in a week or a couple of weeks' time for Christmas, and it'll just be great, because it'll just be like 4 or 5 days of just great time spent with them, good laughs, but just enjoying life. And it helps ground me and re-engage me with what's really important for me in life and for me to focus on.
That's brilliant. I mean, right there is an amazing way to end this conversation. Like, that's amazing. You know, I was thinking you were going to say, you know, somebody like Steve Prefontaine, or, you know, somebody out there that like a famous athlete or whatever. But to say that is very, very humbling. You know, that is very, you know, I love that. Like, it actually got to me a wee. I was like, good man, that's brilliant. But just before we finish up the podcast, I want to do some quick fire questions. So we've got 11 questions. No, we've got 12 questions. We've got 12 questions. Don't like an odd number. I like to stay in an even. So we get 12 questions. You just give me your quickest answer, and then that's us.
Perfect. Right? Let's go for it.
Favorite running shoe?
The Nike Marathoner.
All right.
Yeah. I'd be halfway back down the road at this point now if I was to use them because of the technology, but the Nike Marathoner.
Favorite running location?
Richmond Park. I absolutely love Richmond Park. Incredible.
Yeah. Athletic role model?
You mentioned him, actually, Steve Prefontaine. He is an absolute legend. Like, just puts himself on the line, or did put himself on the line, obviously, when he was alive.
Yeah. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Good. Split shots or half tights?
I'd say half tights. They make me feel a bit quicker when I run.
Do you like the high socks or the ankle socks?
Ankle socks.
Favorite food?
Anything to do with chicken.
Nice. Favorite book you've read?
Favorite book. There's a great book by a guy called Ben Ryan, who was the manager of the New Zealand, the Fiji Sevens, sorry. It's a great book. It's well worth a read. It's called Seven Heaven.
Right, sweet. Favorite strength exercise?
Probably squats.
Favorite movie?
Favorite movie? Rocky. All of them. I can't pick one. And because I just remember watching them when I was younger at Christmas time, they were one every night over the Christmas period.
Yeah. Cat or dog?
Dog.
Favorite terrain, road, track or trail?
I absolutely love the road. I just love getting into a good rhythm and just ticking along.
Smashing, mate. That's the 12 questions. So you know, people who are listening to the podcast, where can they find you? You know, website, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. What's your, and I'll put them in the descriptions below.
Yeah, so my Twitter is Luke Allen 11. Instagram, I think, is at L Allen, but the Allen is 2 1s, so the 11.
Yeah.
And I'll send that through to you. And then LinkedIn is just Luke Allen.
Yeah. And then if you get a website or anything like with the even the TASS or the UMATTER as well.
UMATTER, yeah, absolutely. UMATTER, you can follow on Instagram, the UMATTER project. On LinkedIn is the same. And there's not a Twitter, but yeah, definitely follow the UMATTER stuff as well.
Brilliant. I'll put them in the links below so you can.
And TASS also is on Twitter, Talented Athlete Scholarship Scheme.
Brilliant. So that rounds up everything on the podcast, but I genuinely think we are going to be back on again talking about more. So I think we had a very broad chat about, you know, well-being and structuring your life to be a better person, you know, in general, whether it be a better athlete, better husband or wife or son, daughter, whatever, just being better as a whole. I feel that there's going to be runners and athletes on this podcast listening that want to pick your brain. Maybe we can talk about, you know, the pros and cons of maybe like a Strava or Garmin, all these things I think would be a great perspective from yourself to share. But look, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Sean. It's good to chat. I know we haven't spoke for a while, so yeah, it's good to catch up just generally as well. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we won't make it that long next time.
Definitely not. No, good man.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much.